I suddenly became aware of the incredible smell of warm tapioca. Now, bear with me. And I'm not here to start the Church of the Holy Tapioca. I'm not. But here's something you should know, because you will all experience this. God knows what a huge difference this is for us to encounter him and his beings. And so he gives us something that we loved as a child to make us feel we have come home. And when I was a young boy walking home through a snowstorm in northern Canada in the middle of June, I'd get to my grandmother's house and I'd go in, and on her wood stove, she would have made warm tapioca for me. Isn't that wonderful? And for some of you, it may be the smell of your mom's perfume. It might be the smell of your dad's burn. It might be any of those things that brought you joy as a child. The guardians were wonderful. I felt safe, and then they're very elegant. I do have to tell you this, because I think people would be very interested in this. I was taken by how they bowed to me. They bowed to me, and I felt rather uncomfortable, because I should be bowing to them, and I questioned why, because it was such a bow of respect and subservience, and bowed very low, and they spoke with kind of this Victorian perfection in their voice. I didn't hear any thou or thee or, but a very measured tone that incredibly, and with every word they spoke, there was wisdom. Anyway, I questioned the guardian that I eventually found out was mine all my life. Now that angel had pulled an awful tour of duty, but I digress. But I asked why, and they said, James, do you not know that when we look at mankind, we see the spark of life of our master? Isn't that something? We who consider ourselves the lowest of the low are looked at by the angels in awe of us. Anyway, so we walk, and I'll skip forward, but they showed me many things, told me many things. I developed 360-degree omnivision, I call it. I heard everything. I understood everything. The beautiful flowers that spoke to me, that sang to me. But eventually we come to this beautiful pasture, and I guess they knew my love of horses. And again, I think it ties into your comment on your your grandmother's chocolate chip cookies, and my love of tapioca, and because they wanted to show me something that would really make me happy. And the second guardian raised his hand, and suddenly, coming from around the grove of trees toward me, and as they trotted across the grass lit up with light from their hooves. And there were three of the most magnificent horses coming toward me. Now, I had never studied the Bible. I had no idea at that time that when Jesus comes back, he'll be riding a white horse. It's in the Bible. And I'm stunned, because as I stand there, and they come right up to the fence, and I had loved their kind all my life, and they seemed to know that. And they looked at me with such love in their eyes. And I reached forward to stroke the neck of the lead horse, and my hands sank right into the body of this being of light. And when I pulled it back, Randy, the light of the horse's body stuck to my hand till I got it 10 to 12 inches beyond, and then it came back into the horse's body. And there was one building that stood out among all the rest. And the buildings are made not of stone, not of wood, but of a material that has a light in it. Now, that I don't want it to sound too Las Vegas-y, but it was a gentle, welcoming light. But this particular building glowed with a light that had a warmth to it. And I asked what building that was, and I was stunned when they said, that is the nursery. And I responded, nursery in heaven? And they said, yes, James, this is where the souls of aborted children, or children who die in their innocence, from disease or come back here. And each soul is so precious to God that they're cared for. They grow at a different rate because they're not growing a physical body, so they grow at about 3 times the rate that we do that a child does on Earth, and this is where they take care and so on of the little souls that have been unwanted or have died. And I had no idea how this part of the story would have such an effect on women who have lost children or who have had to have an abortion at a time in their life when they had no other option. And it's been a blessing to explain to these parents that their child lives. Their child lives. And so, anyway, getting right to the main event. After showing me much more, we came back to paradise, the ground of paradise, which was outside the walls, I learned. And I was looking once again at the horses, and I realized I hadn't seen my guardian for a while. So I turned to look for him, and I saw him, and he was about no more than maybe 40, 50 feet away on a small rise. And but when I looked, he was bent over, almost in a kneeling position, and was holding up a book. And then I heard the voice of the Son of God. And it stunned me that he knew my name. He knew me. And he looked at me with the gentlest of smiles, hand still raised, meaning to not come forward. And he said to me, "James, my son, this is not yet your time. Go back and tell your brothers and sisters of the wonders we have shown you." And his hand slowly came down and crossed over his left. And I was overwhelmed with the fact that he knew my name. But more than that, I was now coming to the realization that I wasn't being allowed to stay. And I began to plead, I began to beg, please let me stay. This is what I've yearned for all my existence. I just want to be wherever you are. Please don't send me away. Please let me stay. And I remember saying this, "Please let me stay. I won't be any trouble." Can you imagine saying that to the Son of God? I won't be any trouble. But I was desperate. And suddenly 2 guardians appeared beside me and lifted me from the ground and turned me around and were carrying me back down the path. And I wrenched my shoulder away to turn to beg one more time to allow me to stay. And Jesus was gone. But standing exactly in the place where he had stood was this magnificent warrior angel that had greeted me. And all of a sudden, he began to expand. He grew even taller than 15 feet, and he put his wings out to their full magnificence, and they spread out and upward in this beautiful gold, and he was surrounded with light, and the message was clear that he was barring the way forward for me. And suddenly, I feel the angels hold me again. Everything goes dark, and I'm in a black tunnel, and I can hear water, and it's cold, and it's painful, and I feel like I'm descending at tremendous speed. But unlike the tunnel of light, there's no beauty. There's just darkness, and I'm going down this steep descent, and suddenly, I guess they tell me that I scared the daylights out of the nurses because I had been, of course, triaged and they had told my wife that there was no hope of me coming back, that there was no brain sign, no sign of dreaming, no sign of hallucinating, nothing. And brain sign, of course, is the measure of death, not heartbeat. They, of course, had triaged me, had me hooked up to everything. There was complete renal failure of all my organs. And the doctors had said to Lorraine that they would keep me until our children arrived to say goodbye, and then they would recommend that she pull the plug on the machinery that was flowing blood through my organs. And suddenly I come upright and scared the daylights out of the nurse, she told me, and later, and screaming around all the tubes because I was intubated. And they ran and got my wife and said, "Mrs. Woodford, come quickly, come quickly." And Lorraine's a nurse. She ran into the room and she couldn't believe it. She said, my eyes were as big as saucers. I was trying to orient from the beauty of heaven to lying on a gurney. And she climbed up on the bed with me and started to cry, and they were watching my blood pressure come back to normal. All my organs start to operate again. So eventually they pulled the tube out so I could speak clearly, and my throat was terribly sore and raw. And I looked into my wife's pretty face, and I said, Lorraine, I saw Jesus, and Jesus has horses." Of all the things I could have said to her, Jesus has horses. And I'm back.